Think Zeus is the strongest character in Greek mythology? Think again. Typhon is the most fearsome monster in a system full of the frightening and bizarre. He's known as the father of monsters. Typhon is basically the final boss of the Greek mythological universe. Representing pure primordial chaos, Typhon is so powerful that even the gods themselves ran from him. Typhon is a bitter rival to Zeus himself, and the stories of their epic battles say a lot about the culture of ancient Greece. Sure, a giant serpentine creature with 100 fire-breathing heads would make anyone wet their tunic, but the real significance is that Typhon challenges the very foundation of Greek beliefs. Typhon's legend begins with Hesiod's Theogony. The epic poem depicts Typhon as a massive snake monster so large that his many heads touch the sky. He possesses immense strength and he never tires. Typhon and his partner Echidna, a half-human, half-snake creature, bore many monstrous offspring, including Cerberus, Hades' three-headed hellhound, the cunning Sphinx, the terrible multi-headed Hydra of the sea, the Chimera, the Cilia, and a couple of dragons because why not? But it's Typhon's own convoluted backstory that reveals a lot about the ancient Greeks' priorities. The Greeks, like all cultures, used mythology to understand and attempt to explain the world around them. Everything from why the sun rises every day, to why that big mountain spits out lava, or even how human society itself is structured. So what did a massive snake monster help them understand? Let's start with his appearance and Mediterranean topography. Situated as the Greeks' volcano giant, Typhon's chaotic and dangerous nature was said to be the reason for all kinds of natural disasters, from volcanic eruptions to violent winds and rough seas. The word typhoon might even be derived from Typhon himself. In many sources, Typhon has 100 snake heads, each with dark flicking tongues, a set of eyes that burned with fire, and lava that poured from his many mouths. Later, the Greek scholar and writer Apollodorus described him as a winged monster with serpents for legs, towering over mountains. Besides the numerous snake species encountered in everyday life, the snake, with its ability to lay eggs, shed its skin, and harm humans, was seen by the Greeks as a symbol of duality, representing chaos and order, life and death. Volcanoes, while destructive, also work as a reset button for the environment, producing fertile soil and biodiversity, not to mention creating entirely new land masses. So slapping a bunch of lava-spewing snakeheads on Typhon kinda makes sense, at least to me. And with a little history and geography, you can also find significance in where those descriptions overlap. During the Greek Dark Ages, from roughly 1200 to 800 BCE, the sailors of the Mediterranean island of Euboea were known as great travelers. Some settled near the base of Mount Cassius, on the border of what is now Turkey and Syria. Fun fact, it's a mariner's landmark due to its propensity for thunderstorms. When the Euboeans encountered the ancient Canaanites and Hurrians that lived there, they also learned of their gods that seemed even more powerful than their Zeus. Gods that fathered serpent monsters, and gods that called the mountain home. So there's likely some cultural overlap between mythologies here. But let's get back to Typhon. In Greek mythology, Typhon could rule over all creatures, mortal or immortal, and was an outsider. In the earliest versions of his story, he is son of the primordial deities Gaia and Tartarus. Zeus simply can't have a being more powerful than him, and immediately decides to take him out, swiftly attacking the newly sired creature in an epic battle. So epic, the heat generated from their fighting and Zeus's signature lightning bolts began to melt the earth. Massive waves crashed onto shores as the seas boiled, and scorching winds swirled. Even the underworld shook. Zeus finally overpowers Typhon, forcing him to the ground, piling earth on top of his body, trapping him for all eternity. And according to the Greeks, under a very real mountain. Notably, Zeus doesn't actually destroy Typhon, he can only contain him. This also helps the Greeks explain the intense volcanic activity of the region, an angry giant whose great strength still pushes its way through the earth, providing evidence of the great battle. Scholars still differ on which real mountain the legend refers to, with most naming Mount Etna, Mount Cassius, or a nearby island. Typhon's mythology helps rationalize natural disasters and volcanic eruptions, but in his birth story, we get a real glimpse into ancient Greek life. It's the Homeric hymns for me where things get even more interesting. In that Typhon origin story, Zeus's wife Hera is named as his sole sire. After the goddess Athena sprang fully formed from Zeus's head, Hera, furious at being cut out of the god-making process, sets out to prove she's just as powerful. She one-ups Zeus by creating two deities, Typhon and Hephaestus, two deities with no father. It becomes more than a story about explaining active volcanoes or giant windstorms. It's about paternity, and you can't understand the Greeks without understanding their deep obsession with lineage. In a society that is fixated on parentage, a creature without a father is destabilizing. Typhon becomes a threat to the system itself. Paternity in ancient Greece was a serious consideration, both legally and socially. To be a recognized citizen in Athens, you had to be born to 2 Athenian parents in a legal marriage. The Greeks saw their households, or oikos, as the domains of men who were responsible for representing everyone inside to the wider polis, the self-governing city-states that made up ancient Greece. Democracy then was only possible if a man was able to maintain control over his household, including his slaves, sons under 18, daughters of any age, and his wife. Those who couldn't control their household were seen as unfit citizens. But Typhon's creation by Hera alone seems to indicate that the Greeks viewed the female body as just as powerful as the male, but only at first glance. Because when you look deeper, Hera produces a literal monster, whom she gives to a giant snake to raise, and who is defeated by Zeus, the ultimate patriarch. So male sex and sovereignty still reign supreme, literally, and the patriarchy wins again. In some ways, Zeus's treatment of Typhon also reflects the ancient Greeks' treatment of legitimacy and social order. Newborns without proper lineage were at risk of being left to exposure or abandoned in nature, a legal way of giving children up in ancient Greece. If you managed to survive and grow up without a legal male guardian, it pushed you into the margins of society, into living as an outsider. Illegitimate males were not allowed to inherit property or vote. Typhon didn't face these fates exactly, but he is imprisoned for all eternity. In a world ordered by fathers, kings, gods, patriarchs, Typhon is the fear that could collapse everything. In Apollodorus' account, the story changes in a crucial way. In this battle, Typhon actually defeats Zeus and cuts him into parts with an adamantine sickle and wraps the pieces in a bear skin before concealing them in a remote cave. But luckily for Zeus, the god of wild nature Pan and his dad Hermes, the herald of the gods, decide to save him, and they recover his body, restoring Zeus to his full glory and enabling him to seek revenge. When Zeus falters against Typhon, even briefly, the myth cracks open a question ancient Greece rarely asked out loud. What happens when the father can't protect? What if they can be defeated? Because in that moment, Typhon exposes a deeper fear. He exists outside the structure that defines everything else. He's an outsider, a monster so powerful he can collapse the entire system. And if Zeus can fail, the order built beneath him isn't infallible either. Dreaded but constantly revisited by ancient writers, Typhon comes to represent the boundary between chaos and control, from sheer animality to Greek civility. When Typhon shows up in modern stories, he's a threat that could topple everything. Whether it's in Magic the Gathering, or Hades 2, or in Percy Jackson, he is a force that must be controlled, and only with a lot of people helping out. He's proof that the system itself isn't as stable as it seems. Things can collapse, even at the top. So when we look back at Typhon, we're not just looking at an ancient 100-headed serpent monster buried under a mountain. We're looking at an early expression of a question we still grapple with. What and who gets to decide what civilization looks like? During the Greek Dark Ages from roughly I don't know why it's gonna trip me up. So what did a massive snake monster help them understand? Pan and his dad Hermes, the herald of the gods, Hermes. Okay.